The keys to longevity, 2 decades in real estate later. Welcome back to the Transaction Care Podcast. I am your host and resident care coordinator, Lillian Hernandez, but you can call me Lily, like the flower, because we are learning and growing together. I'm giving you the keys. There are no gatekeepers here. Now let's jump into today's episode. 2 decades in real estate? What? Wow. In today's episode, we're going to answer 3 questions. How I'm feeling today, how I felt when I started, and how do I feel about the future? So, in a way, I'm interviewing myself in this episode, so welcome your guest, me. But I do want to take time to celebrate that this is a big win for me personally, and the amount of growth that I've experienced in the last couple of decades has been tremendous, but also well worth every single roller coaster I ever endured in this industry that is real estate. It is volatile, it is rewarding, but at the same time, this is a ride I did not think I would be on this long. No joke. And we'll get into all of that in this episode, but I do want to take the time to thank you all for listening, for being a part of my community. We are strong and mighty and still growing. And honestly, real estate found me. I didn't find real estate. At the time, everything was so brand new to me. I never really worked a real job. So the fact that I'm still here 20 years later working in this industry and creating ways for myself that are in alignment with myself and my values, I'm just so grateful and blessed. And we're going to get into all of the feels today. But in future episodes, I'm going to be handing out more keys on and related to longevity from my POV, as well as all of the other nuanced in-betweens that factor into a long-term career and or business, which honestly, this is all in real time. I am still actively learning and open to learning. That doesn't ever stop. So let's just jump straight into this conversation. So how am I feeling today? Well, the first word that comes to mind is relief. Relief in knowing that I'm always going to be okay. And I don't just mean that financially, because honestly, financially, if I was to base my current situation on my finances, it wouldn't be the best answer. But there's a sense of ease, peace, calmness that I have around my career that exists because of the work I've done, because of the risks I've taken, because of the leaps of faith I've had in my abilities to show up, to invest in myself, to put myself first, to know what that feels like, to actually feel my feelings and navigate those treacherous waters when I was going through being fired or laid off or rejected, whatever the case may be. I am experiencing a major sense of relief. 2 decades later, I can say with my chest that I am proud of myself. And for the first time in my life in 2018 was when I actually said that out loud with so many tears in my eyes. And fast forward 6 years later, 6+ years later, I still feel that way. And that's where that sense of relief comes from, is all of the things and people that I had to release in order to feel that, to be in a state of relief. And, there was a lot of worry, there was a lot of doubt, there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of burnout, which I talk about a lot on this show. Is burnout is real, exhaustion is real, navigating a new career is tough. It 100% is. And having made it past my first 5 years of running my own business, looking back at the 15 years prior to that, it all added up and eventually made sense. And even in times when things don't make sense today, I trust that it will work out because I trust myself. And that's also a part of the relief I'm feeling, is I didn't trust myself before. I didn't even know who I was before. And this version of me, who I am, who I'm growing up to be, and even at my big age of 40, I trust myself. And that goes a lot further than any skill I'll learn or any book I'll read or any amount of coaching I will ever receive. It's the moment when I was able to say, I trust myself, was when I knew no matter what I do in life, no matter where I work, no matter what business I'm running, no matter who's in my life or not in my life, I trust myself, I trust God, and I trust the process. Now, was that always a feeling I've had? No. But is it a feeling I'm willing to maintain and invest the time and effort in again, maintaining and upholding? 100% yes. 1000% yes. So that is how I'm feeling today. But that journey wasn't always so pretty. So to answer the next question, how did I feel when I started? So June 2004, I was 20 years old. I was still in college, but on the verge of dropping out. I had no money. I was transitioning out of playing sports my entire life to now having to work and figure out what life looked like without sports. I had just gotten my driver's license. No joke. I had my permit for 5 years, but never really committed to taking the test until about 19 or 20. So I was fresh in this world. And the fact that my very first quote unquote real job was in the real estate industry with no job experience other than I'm just willing to learn. I'm willing to figure this out. And I'm a good listener. I'm just glad that I was myself in that interview. But prior to that, I just wanted to make some money to afford burritos and CDs. You know, I've talked about my early days in the past on old episodes, but it was true, you know, and I thought I was going to work in the music industry at the time. And I took courses that reflected that. I always knew I would be in business somehow, some way, but real estate, there was no, at least none that I was aware of. There were no signs or messages that said I should work in real estate or that, you know, this is the industry. Like no one in my family had real estate. No one in my family worked in real estate. None of my friends, nothing. So the fact that one day, you know, I had a friend that was also looking for work and he knew I was looking for work. He called me and he was like, hey, I can't make this job interview, but you should go. It was the oddest thing, but I'm so grateful for that call because had he went on that interview, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And who knows where life would have taken me. I know I still would have been fine, but I truly believe that I am exactly where I should be today. And that's with no regrets, even through the things that some of the BS that I've went through over the years. But back then, I was so naive. I had no idea what was ahead or how to navigate any of it. I was learning on the spot, much like any 20-year-old. But for me, for that to be one of my first and only jobs, I didn't know that was going to be the case, but I experienced my first layoff. I experienced getting fired. I experienced quitting, all in that one job. And it all happened to be in real estate. And when I first started, again, I just wanted to make a few bucks while I figured out everything in school. You know, maybe I'll take the semester off so I could work. Because in my mind, everything was a TV episode. I watched so much TV growing up that I thought, oh, people take, you know, a semester off and travel. I knew nothing about travel. If it wasn't for sports, I wouldn't have been able to travel in my early 20s. You know what I mean? But having now to be responsible, for all of this paperwork and working with grown women and men was so new to me. I was so intimidated. I was definitely willing to work. One thing about me is I always had good work ethic, and that is a testament to, those in my family who raised me, who took me and picked me up from school, and always ingrained in me, school and sports practices, that if you commit to something, you have to show up for it. And looking back, that was definitely one of the greatest lessons I could have ever been taught. But at the same time, on the flip side of that, I do wish I had more experience with how to quit a job or how to be okay with having several jobs, and that was something I didn't really do in my early 20s. So when I was first starting out, I was just happy to get a check, and I was like, oh, all I have to do is sort these papers? Easy. Did I know it was going to lead to this today, here sitting with you talking on this podcast about what I've been doing for the last 20 years? Kind of, sort of. Not going to lie. Everything back then for me was sport. That was my natural habitat, was either being on a court or a field. So when I had to enter the workforce, I was like, how do I make this exciting? How do I improve, And growing up, all I saw was people that worked one job. So for me, I was just like, well, let me just figure this out and stay here as long as I can, because school isn't working out. I personally can't afford school, even with the money I'm making here. But I also like the fact that I can afford to just do whatever the heck I wanted. I had my own car. I was good. I was going out, and that was all I needed in life back then. But when things got real, that's when I started to understand, oh, this isn't just fun and games. This isn't just a competition. This is real life. So when it came time to become full-time, I was on vacation, and I had made a big fuss about, wanting to take that person's job who was quitting, and telling everyone, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it. Again, the competitor in me wanted that job, but deep down, I didn't want it. My ego did. You know what I mean? And when I was on vacation, away from the job and out of the office, I was like, oh, I want to do more of this. I want to travel. I want to see the world, maybe go back to school. They were fighting for me to get the job, like to the point where they were calling me while I was on vacation. And I was so young. I think I was around maybe 22, 23. So I wasn't really there that long where they were advocating for me. I didn't know what advocating was for myself back then. And I felt guilty. So I took the job. I was like, yeah, I'll do it, I guess, even though I changed my mind while I was on vacation. And the job was to be a full-time transaction coordinator. But they didn't trust that I was capable of doing that because I had very minimal training. I was young. They were definitely basing their decision on my age and experience, which looking back was wrong. But for me, I was thinking, well, I could use something more stable. I don't have anything else lined up. I did make a big fuss out of this, so I should keep my word. When in actuality, looking back, of course, no regrets, but looking back, I definitely would have stayed with my, I don't want to do this mindset and figured something else out from there. But so from that point on, I was on my own. I had to figure out how to be a full-time transaction coordinator, because at that point, again, I was part-time. I was taking time off when I felt like it. Now I was in charge of all of these files, all of this paperwork. But the cool thing about it was I had my own office, so I was grateful for that. But now I have all of these people, not people, but yes, people, these realtors coming into my space, my office, demanding things, talking to me sideways, disrespectfully. And I didn't appreciate that. But I was so young and inexperienced, I thought that was normal. So when I first started as a TC and becoming full-time in this industry, I was like, wow, there are a lot of quote unquote ugly people in this industry. But I was so scared. I was still processing things from my childhood with bad teachers that were showing up in my work, and realtors would come in the office yelling at me, or why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And again, I had no concept of time management. This is before Google even existed. This is before social media existed. I was just a lost puppy trying to figure out life. And my ego was like, we're going to figure this out. You said you were going to do it. We are not going to quit. And because I threw myself into the fire, I was learning on the spot. So if I had to sum up those first few years of being, an employee, a working adult, I would definitely say it was stressful. Stressful was the word. So the fact that I'm still here talking about this 20 years later, still navigating the real estate industry and experimenting and exploring different areas of it, knowing what I went through in the past, I have grown up in this industry. I mean, there's no other field of work that I've dabbled in. There were a few other jobs I've had in between, when I was laid off and fired and whatnot, but those didn't really stick. I think a lot of the skills I took from those jobs, like I was a party/club promoter, I learned a lot about marketing in that field. I learned a lot about networking. I learned a lot about having fun in the workplace through those jobs. But ultimately, real estate was like a boomerang. It just kept coming back. It just kept coming back. So that brings me to, where am I going with it? How do I feel about the future? Will I still continue to work in real estate? Or is this going to manifest and evolve into something totally unrelated? And honestly, I don't know. But I can say with confidence, I am officially no longer taking on new transaction coordinator clients. It would have to be a very special circumstance in order for me to say yes. But that was a decision I've been sitting on and thinking about for the last year. Not gonna lie, I do wish I was able to be more decisive. And I think that's a journey I need to continue to explore and figure out why it takes me so long to make a decision. But I do factor in the future. I do think about, longevity and what it does take to last in an industry such as real estate or having your own business. But I also know that I have to listen to my intuition. I have to listen to my dreams, my goals, my desires, and even my skills, new and old. And in order for me to make any of those things happen or come true or get to the next steps or levels in my life, I have to step away from one of these things in order to make space and time for the new. And that means, stepping back with transaction coordination in order to show up for the podcast, pursue more opportunities for the show, bigger guests, not even just bigger guests, but just provide more value. Because the vanity metrics are amazing and they're great and they can create opportunities. But at the same time, I have to remember that I am of service to the people, not just as a transaction coordinator, but through this show, through my content, through my existence. I truly believe that. And a part of that journey means that I have to say no to the thing that's taken up most of my time. So I guess you could say I'm retired. I do still have transaction coordinator clients that I've held on to, and how I came to keeping them on my roster was resistance versus ease. And those clients that I had the most resistance with, I let go of, or they let me go, because I think at this point in time, we both can recognize when things aren't working out. And it was just a matter of who was going to initiate the conversation first. And those that I'm still working with, I'm so grateful for. And I almost was like, you know what, I'm just going to start fresh. But I had to be honest and realistic with my financial situation, and letting them go would have been a dumb financial decision, point blank, period. And I really enjoy working with those people. So it came down to, again, resistance versus ease. And when I work with those few people, there's a lot of ease. And I can be very impulsive, which is where the just start fresh part of my life comes into play. And again, I think that's more work for therapy, not just the podcast that I have to do. And keeping them is allowing me to, it affords me the opportunity to keep paying my bills, to save, to invest, to even pay down a few new debts that I've unfortunately have taken on in the last year. But I also know that this is the right track I'm on. And what is ahead of me is ultimately God's plan. And as long as I'm of service and listening and trusting myself, I know that it's all going to work out. I've also lowered my expenses to where the pressures of needing to work so much are off the table. I've had to find a resolution between my relationship with money and work over the years. And I think I'm in a place that isn't perfect. It's not perfect, but it is less stress to have to owe more than actually having time for myself. And again, I could be speaking from a place of privilege, and I'm definitely speaking from a place of gratitude, because past me really was thinking of future me when I was saving back then, when I was making way more money than I ever made ever, and it wasn't even that much more than what I made at the office, but it was more than I even believed for myself. So the fact that I made that happen and aligned myself with people that believed in me, that saw me, that knew I was capable of being their transaction coordinator. I'm just glad that I at least had the self-awareness to put some of that money away, because when things hit the fan, pandemics, change of the guards of you would say, loss of clients, lack of my own personal marketing for my business, it was past me who was saving and learning about money that is taking care of me today. And again, that was a lot of work. That was a lot of learning that I had to go through, a lot of sacrifice and saying no. Or when I do say yes to going out or traveling, I have a better understanding of where my money is going to go. How am I going to make this a quality experience versus just throwing my money away like I used to? It's the difference between, okay, if I'm going to subscribe for anything, what is something that I need? So we all know we can share, well, scratch that. We all know Netflix is accessible to multiple logins. And I happen to benefit from one of those logins. And bear with me, I know I'm kind of going off topic. But it was these subtle decisions of, okay, I don't need a Netflix subscription or Hulu or Yahoo or whatever, right? But when I go shopping for deodorant, they always sell out of the one I use. So let me go to the website and order one. And then I found out that they do subscriptions. So I said, okay, rather than me always going to the store and being disappointed or having to keep an Instacart account active for someone to go find this particular deodorant for me, let me just subscribe to them. So I don't even have to think about it. So now, not only am I saving money, but I'm saving myself time that I can invest in other aspects, whether it's learning a new skill or investing quality services to my clients, whatever the case may be. It was those subtle changes that really made a big difference in times of stress and struggle and financial downward turns, if you will. So that's all I have for today. And this is fun. I can't believe. No, I can believe it. I believe it. We are here 20 years later. Thank you to those that have been on this journey with me all 20 years, or maybe in the last 20 minutes of this episode. I see you. I appreciate you. I will continue to document this journey of figuring out and navigating new territories within this industry, even outside of this industry, because I'm always open to trying new things, whether it's a hobby or something to make me money, or to meet new people, to build community. I think community is the biggest key to life and success, as well as following up and learning how to communicate. So with all of that said, this has been another episode of the Transaction Care Podcast. But before we exit this episode, please leave a 5-star review, 1-star review, any star. Just leave a review. I appreciate it. And add me on social media, particularly TikTok, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and visit transactioncare.com. Join my newsletter so you can be updated with the latest announcements, exclusive deals, and discounts for one-on-one coaching, or when I'm going to be going live doing Q&As or co-working happy hour sessions on YouTube and or TikTok, as well as maybe if I'm in your city or your state or your country, we can meet and do a co-working session or simply grab lunch. I appreciate you all. 20 years later, I'm still learning and growing, hence the tag, we are learning and growing together. But those were just a few of my keys to longevity in real estate 2 decades later. What are your experiences? If you've been in this industry for 2 decades, or maybe you're approaching 20 years, how do you feel? How do you feel today? How did you feel when you started? And how do you feel about the future? I'd love to hear from you. And if you have any advice or tips for me for those that are 3-4 decades in, send them my way. Or if you're just starting out and you're fresh and brand new to this industry or this lifestyle, reach out to me, tc@transactioncare.com. I'm more than willing to answer your questions. We can set up a one-on-one, get you on the right track, whether it's me helping you directly or me redirecting you to the right person, information, or resources available out there to you. Because again, I'm giving you the keys. There are no gatekeepers here. Care for yourself, care for your wealth. Your time is worth it. Let's coordinate. Talk soon.